like to call tonight's meeting to order and start with asking Councilmember LaRoe Munoz to lead us in the pledge.
Please join me in standing. Place your hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, do we have someone, is Greg Quirk here to do the invocation? Or is someone here to do the invocation? No, okay. Then thank you, everybody. Okay, City Clerk's report on posting the agenda and roll call.
Tonight's agenda was posted on Wednesday, December 1st, 2021 at 4:52 p.m. Councilmember Armendariz noted in absence. Councilmember Bracco.
Here.
Councilmember Hilton.
Here.
Councilmember LaRoe Munoz.
Present.
Councilmember Marks.
Here.
Councilmember Tovar.
Here.
Mayor Blankley.
Here. Okay, next item is B, which is orders of the day. And on that, I'd like to mention that item 6 has been withdrawn. So we will not be addressing that item on tonight's agenda. Okay, employee introductions. We have two. Jimmy? It was item 7 that was withdrawn, sorry.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. It's my pleasure to introduce two new employees that fall in the administration area of the city. So first we'll introduce Ty Pham, who is our new city clerk. And many of us are very, very happy to have Ty join our team. Ty holds a BA in political science from UC Irvine and started his professional career back in 2014 at the city of Cerritos. And since then, he's been at various cities, including Rancho Cucamonga, La Puente, La Cañada, Flint Ridge, and Westminster. He became a deputy city clerk in July of 2018 for the city of Emeryville, and that's where he's most recently been employed. Prior to that, he had a different career. He worked in the animation industry and ran certain parts of a nonprofit that runs the Anime Expo. And so he has a very diverse background in other areas as well. And he was also one time a Disney cast member, so he knows all the secrets of everything that goes on in Disney. So he's also the proud dad of 4 dogs and a cat. So he's very busy with that. And he likes to go to the gym and go hiking and go on vacation to Japan. So we are all very excited to have Ty with us, and fills a big role in our organization, and couldn't be here any sooner. So with that, I'll introduce to you Ty Pham.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and honorable council members. It is my pleasure to be serving the city of Gilroy, and I look forward to working with you and the community in the days to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Okay, the next employee I would like to introduce to you is Crystal Zamora. She is the program administrator in the city administrator's office. And she's a resident of Gilroy, has been here a long time, and has spent the last 15 years working in various nonprofits or community campaigns, including the Youth Alliance, Literacy Campaign for Monterey County, Community Solutions, and the Youth Orchestra of Salinas. So she has a lot of connections to our nonprofits in the area, and will definitely help the city make those connections and guide folks to getting the services that they need, but may not be aware of. She most recently worked as the Associate Director of Learning and Evaluations, and at the forefront of her work has been a deep commitment to addressing the needs of our most vulnerable and hard to reach populations. So that is great. Outside of the nonprofit sector, she's led corporate social responsibility programming, collective impact model initiatives, and developed database systems to increase efficiency and functions. Crystal feels incredibly fortunate to be part of this team, and she lives very close by, could walk to work if she'd want to, and has been married to her husband of 20 years and has 3 children at 6, 4, and 2, so she's used to not sleeping, and will fit in right with us as well. Her family loves to go hiking and baking cookies and playing board games, and that sounds like a lot of fun. So, Crystal, if you'd like to come up and say hi to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy, and thank you, everybody. I feel very fortunate to be here working and living in Gilroy and being of service. My mom always taught me that, you know, the biggest service is to others. So I hope to continue that legacy here. Thank you very much.
Thank you and welcome. Okay, I need to correct myself back under orders of the day. It is not item 6 that has been withdrawn. That is the consent calendar. That is not being withdrawn. It is item 8A. That has been withdrawn by the applicant, and so we will not hear that tonight. Okay, ceremonial items we have none. Proclamations we have none. Presentations to the council. We were going to have a presentation by Senator Laird, and he had a scheduling conflict, so he will not be here tonight. And that brings us to public comments for items not on the agenda. Leanne or Ty, do we have, how many do we have?
We have 4 public comments, Mayor.
4 public comments for items not on the agenda. Okay, well then we will give that 3 minutes each.
Okay, first,
Okay.
First public comment is Kristen Brown.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Kristen Brown. I'm a parent at Gilroy Prep School, and I'm coming to you to talk to you about a homeless meth encampment that's happening right outside our school fence line, and it's just getting worse by the weeks. And the things we've witnessed are people changing outside their tents, smoking, talking to themselves. That's why I'm thinking it's more than just homeless. It's definitely an addiction issue. And I'm not okay with this. I walk my kid to and from school every day, and parents are here too to support, saying that they want this addressed if we can address it, and maybe future agenda meetings can be brought up on this topic because it seems like it's just growing everywhere. But I don't know these people. I don't know if they're pedophiles. I don't know if they have weapons back there, and they can watch. They're so close they can watch our kids do PE. So that being said, I just hope that you take it in consideration to see what's going on in there. And I know everyone's hands are probably tied with it, but I just wanted to let you know that us as parents is very concerning. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Next speaker is Paul Brown.
Okay, are you running the clock? Is the clock running, Leanne, where they can see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, good evening, City Council. Just to follow up with what my wife's saying, but a little broader vision and view of it, of just kind of casting into the future and what kind of city the city of Gilroy is going to be. I work in San Jose, and San Jose's been a lovely city, but we've got big time problems, and I feel they're coming our way. I feel that we have a lot of addiction issues that are happening there. And I think it's kind of the tip of the iceberg of what we're seeing here right now. And I think what we do today is going to have a profound impact on what this city looks like 5 years from now. When you look at the production of methamphetamine, the amount that's coming into this country, into this state particularly, the change that it's had, if you research it, it's chemically based now, and the production capacity of these companies is no different than our mass manufacturing here, getting pushed over and indoctrinated into our people. This stuff, when you look at meth back in 2010, 2012, it was $20,000 a pound. Now it's $1,000. It's very, very cheap to get. You could have an addict, and these are of their testimonies that I've read about regarding, for somebody could go on for 10 years and be able to kind of balance life. It's not necessarily a good life or one you would want as an addict. However, there's people now, they get addicted and they can't function and be in society in 2 weeks, 2 months, because of the profound effect it's having on their mental capacity and degrading them so bad that the families can't be around them and other folks. And they become a danger to themselves and society. So I'm just pleading with you guys that perhaps we could get that on the agenda and really maybe the city and the other folks can share what the plan would be for that going forward in the future. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next speaker.
The next speaker is Beatrice Macias.
Good evening. My name is Beatrice Macias. I'm here because I would like Councilor Rebecca to step down so they can finish the investigation. I'm really not very good in speaking in front of people, but mostly I would like for her to step down. And I have very many concerns because she is a leader of our community. And what happened in her property, it should have never happened. So I would like for her to step down, and thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Next speaker is Petra Macias.
Is there one after that, Leanne, that maybe they can start coming? I don't see a Petra. Nobody's coming up. Oh, yes, she is.
Followed by Ron Kirkish.
Okay.
It is very hard for me today. My name is Petra Macias. I'm Grandma Mikey Macias, and just like my sister said, I would like for Rebecca to step down. I have concerns too, a lot of concerns for this community with these children, and I just want her to step down until the investigation is over. I could say a lot of things, but I feel like if I start, I'm just gonna. I just want her to step down for our community and for our children's sake. That's all I want. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ron Kirkish, followed by Dory Prado.
Good morning, evening, Mayor and Council and community. First of all, I'd like to thank the parents that spoke about the meth issue. Not often do we get parents coming to City Hall to express their issues and their concerns. So thank you so much. I hope more people will. In regards to the two ladies that just spoke, I want you to know that there's a lot of people that agree with you, very many people, and I can't say anything more. But maybe I will contact you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Dory Prado.
Good evening, Gilroy City Council and community members. I just wanted to come up here and share a few words, and it's about our youth in our community. This is a very sensitive subject for me because I have a nonprofit working with youth, and I struggle asking myself, what can I do myself to help our youth? How are guns getting in the hands of our youth? I believe in gun safety. I believe people have the right to carry guns. How are our youth getting guns in their hands? And what can we do to help this situation? The Macias family mourning the loss of their grandson and son. We can't get him back, but what can we do as a community so this doesn't happen again? There needs to be accountability, and each of us, and I don't have the answer. My mind is going crazy. What can I do to help? What can each of us do to help so guns do not get in the hands of our children? Could have happened at maybe one of my youth parties or events that I have. It could have. Accountability needs to take place, and we all need to think about what do we do to help support our youth. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments?
No further public comments, Mayor.
Okay. Yes, please.
The mayor has asked me as city attorney to make a very brief statement. I think the requests from the Maciases were properly addressed essentially to Council Member Armendariz. The city council, she's an elected official. The city council does not have any control over whether or not she steps down or remains on the council. She does, and I think your comments were addressed essentially to her, and that's appropriate under the city charter.
Thank you. And thank you all. Okay. Item 4 is reports of council members. Council Member Bracco.
Nothing to report.
Council Member Marks.
Just wanted to say briefly that we had a very nice parade Saturday night and the lighting of the Christmas tree downtown. And also for everyone who has not been out to Gilroy Gardens to view holiday lights, they will be open until after New Year. So please go ahead and visit. It's a beautiful sight. Thank you.
Council Member Hilton.
Thank you, Mayor Blankley. From the Visit Gilroy California Welcome Center, Visit Gilroy Strategic Marketing Plan updated board members received a copy of the status report through 9/30/2021 of the 2021 goals adopted by the board. All target goals are tracking significantly over 100%, including website page views, website users, hotel views, and collateral downloads. Board members received a copy of the City of Gilroy Lodging report for third quarter ending September 30th, 2021. Executive Director Howard was pleased to report that transit occupancy tax, the TOT, collected from third quarter 2021 surpassed the amount collected for third quarter of 2019. However, the occupancy rates and average daily rates still continue to lag behind pre-COVID numbers in 2019. Board members received a preliminary report on the outcome of the digital influencers who visited Gilroy during the months of September and October from Articulate Solutions. A final report detailing all the deliverables for this campaign will be presented to the board during the January 2022 board meeting. And from Silicon Valley Clean Energy, the second program will pilot giving away 50 portable electric batteries to qualified medical baseline customers to provide backup power in case of outages. These relatively low-cost devices could potentially save the lives of customers who rely on electricity to power medical devices, which is becoming increasingly important as PG&E's enhanced safety line measures are leading to more frequent outages for customers living in mountain areas. For more information, will be available on these programs as they get launched in the coming months. And lastly, I just want to say happy holidays to everyone. Thank you.
Councilmember Tovar.
No report tonight, Mayor.
Councilmember LaRomagnos.
No report, Madam Mayor.
Okay, and mine, the only reportable item is through Cities Association that I'll address under agenda item 10C. There's been nothing else to report in any of the other committees that I'm on. All right, future council initiated agenda items. Are there any? Councilmember Tovar.
Thank you, Mayor. I was hoping that we could revisit the discussion of a possible sale downtown. I know that pre-COVID we had that discussion a few years back, and we haven't talked about it in quite some time. And given how our okay, yeah, I know. Okay. All right. Given how our downtown is starting to get revitalized and change, I think it would be nice to have that discussion again and see where it leads.
Okay.
All right, Mayor, I have one. I think we should go ahead and follow up at a future council meeting the methamphetamine camps and our homeless encampments and the crime involved with it.
Okay, so one at a time. So one is for to discuss a paseo, a second paseo downtown. So does everybody want to chime in on that? Okay, so that's a go. And the other is, Carol, rephrase?
I think we need to look into the methamphetamine homeless camps and what's going on in these different areas. So we need to have a report. So at a future council meeting, let's study that.
Okay, I'm not, are you clear, Jimmy, on what she's asking? Because I'm not clear if that's
Okay,
going
I
to be
can
a
make it
report
clear.
coming back from.
All right, we need to do something about the methamphetamine homeless camps. And so whatever it takes to bring that subject up to the council where we can have discussion and come up with a plan on how we get rid of this in Gilroy. Because I agree, you know, are we going to get on a path of no return? We have to start doing something now because it's not acceptable behavior to having anywhere in Gilroy.
Yeah, it's not. We just came off of the ad hoc committee looking at all those things. That's why I'm trying to specify what it is you want to put on the agenda. What specifically, so that, okay, Councilmember Rocco can add.
A report from our city manager. This is the one that I notified you about last week. So,
okay,
what you found out.
Okay, yeah.
Yes, Mayor and Council, actually, we have fielded comments and concerns from residents, and we have taken actions. I don't have a vehicle to provide that to you tonight, but I'd be happy to give you a follow-up at the next council meeting verbally about the things that we have done to try to address the situation around Gilroy Prep specifically, if that suits the council.
Is that sufficient, Carol? Okay, if that's, okay.
Mayor, can I just ask a question? Sorry. Jimmy, yes, no, I think you're absolutely right. We need to address the concerns that the residents brought up, but I also want to make sure that we're looking at the entire city as well, and just not one particular area, because I think, as we all know, it's happening throughout our city. So I just want to make sure it's a larger scope of that we're looking at in regards to this issue. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. On to item 6, consent calendar. Sorry. Oh, I thought so, yeah. Okay, consent calendar, I think I'd like to first see if council has one to pull off, and second would be if we have any public comment. So nothing to pull off, okay. Do we have any public comment on the consent calendar?
No public comment.
All right, then I just need a motion in a second, and it looks like we've got them on our screen. Does this need to be roll call? Roll call vote?
Yes, yes.
Yes, it does.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Armendariz, absent. Councilmember Bracco.
Yes.
Hilton.
Aye.
LaRoe Munoz.
Yes.
Marks.
Yes.
Tovar.
Yes.
Mayor Blankley.
Yes. All right, that's unanimous with one absent. All right, bids and proposals, we have none. Public hearings, that's what's been withdrawn. So we are now on item 9.
Mayor, we have one public comment on the public hearing. So typically we have allowed public comment, being that the item is on the agenda and being continued to a future meeting. We will open the public comment, take any public comment, and close the public comment and continue the item.
Right, but it's not being continued, it's been withdrawn. Okay, go ahead.
I think the appropriate process, we're not going to reopen the public hearing, but taking a public comment would be appropriate.
Okay.
Yes.
So for this item, Michelle Nelson would like to speak.
Okay.
There, am I on?
I don't know. Hopefully you can see the clock and the microphone is on.
No.
No clock?
No clock. I can go all night. Okay, well, okay. Madam Mayor, City Council members, I have a few questions and concerns regarding the Project Garlic Industrial Subdivision. And I'll send this via email later on for you to look at. It appears that the section about burrowing owls was deleted in the mitigated negative declaration. If so, why? When was the survey done? These birds are extremely sensitive to disturbances and may use a site 1 year, but not the next. I've also called the Audubon Society to ask them. In the mitigated negative declaration, there was a requirement that no construction shall take place during nesting season, but I would like to point out that once that habitat is destroyed, even outside the nesting season, it is gone forever. Given the explosion of construction in Gilroy over the last few years, particularly alongside Santa Teresa Boulevard, this represents further loss of available wildlife habitat in our city. Another point, the level of service or capacity at the intersections of Arroyo Circle and Leavesley and Camino Arroyo and Pacheco Pass are already in an operational deficiency, and this project will make things worse. The transportation analysis states that the proposed project is expected to generate over 3,000 new daily vehicle trips. The average daily employment vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, is 19.23 miles per job, which exceeds the threshold of 17.12 miles per job. In order to reduce that impact, the applicant has prepared a draft Transportation Demand Management, TDM, program that should reduce that to a less than significant level, quote unquote. Three measures are a 4-day work week, to which 80% of employees will be assigned, a carpool program, which is described as having the employer encourage 20% participation, but there is no requirement, a pre-tax benefit commute services, which is described as having the employer strive for 20% participation of its workforce, but again, there is no requirement. Bike racks and lockers are also included in the plan, which would have a minimal effect on the project's vehicle miles traveled. Has Amazon, which appears to be the projected tenant, implemented such a program in Milpitas or elsewhere? And if so, what was the success rate? If this project is approved, the planned extensions of Cameron and Wren's will be eliminated. To accommodate the extra traffic, additional lanes will be required. Has there been a study regarding the length of time that the construction will require? What is the funding for that project? Has the city of Gilroy adopted a greenhouse reduction strategy, and if not, has the applicant as required? If yes, where can I find that? I believe you are not required to respond to public comment, but I would appreciate a response. Finally, I know you have a great responsibility weighing the different needs of the community, and I will respect whatever decision you make regarding this project in the future. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, anything else? No? Okay. All right, so that brings us now to item 10A, correct? And that's a Gilroy Zoning Code Update Progress Report by Craig Tambernini.
Council recalls that we initiated this project quite a while back with the general plan update. The general plan was in the zoning code.
Was turned off. Thank you. I was projecting well. So the zoning code and the general plan had been initiated and then paused back in 2016 and then resumed and adopted finally in 2020. The general plan adoption then initiated the next step of the project, which was to update our comprehensive zoning ordinance. So we've initiated that after adoption of the general plan, or restarted that process. And the new zoning code obviously is going to implement all of the land use classifications in the general plan, including the new mixed use corridor proposed on First Street and the new employment center general plan land use designation, which requires additional effort and work and attention to detail. The zoning code update's also going to be modernizing the code, simplifying the code to the extent practicable, and clarifying the code to as much extent as we possibly can. The current code has 54 separate articles, and the new zoning code is planning to consolidate that into 8 articles. So we're hoping that that'll help readers and users identify the sections that are pertinent to them in the zoning code. So with respect to what we're working on, we've completed the first article, which is essentially the implementation section of the zoning code. Gives you the overview of what the zoning code is meant for and what it does. That article is very simple. It's been completed at the end of last year. And then we've been working diligently on Article 2. That's really the core or the heart of the zoning code. It's all of the land use tables and standards. That section of the code is extremely important because it influences all the other zoning code sections relate back to that. So we've just completed a second review of that. It's taken a little longer than we anticipated, but that's because we want to get it right. We'll have that complete and ready to go, and then the applicants or the consultants moving on with completion of the remaining 6 articles. The Article 5 has to do with legal nonconformities. That's already underway. That's a fairly straightforward and simple article. We don't expect anything new or surprising in that. We're just going to recodify that in a new place in the code. The Article 3 will cover all of the regulations that are applicable to all zones. So those are general standards such as parking, performance standards, including noise, things of that nature, accessory structures, things that are general in nature. Though, again, we're going to take what's in our current code and then see if we can update and improve that and make it more modern. The next section is standards for specific uses. So this will be the outdoor dining types of things, alcohol beverage sales, density bonus, hillside regulations, things of that nature. And then permit processing procedures, which is our use permit and zoning, architectural and site review. The one thing I wanted to point out about that is one of the goals we have is to streamline that as much as we can to reduce levels of review and consolidate minor use permits into one use permit type, so that we don't have a downtown use permit and a downtown special use permit. We'll just have a minor use permit and try to downgrade some things where we think it's appropriate. And of course, the commission and council are going to have a chance to see that and weigh in on that if they think that's appropriate. But our goal is, again, to streamline and make the process less cumbersome. And then the last two sections are fairly straightforward. Zoning ordinance, Article 6, permit, I covered that, I'm sorry. The next two are pretty straightforward. Zoning ordinance administration is the rules for implementation, appeals, things of that nature. And then, of course, definitions. Our goal is to update and modernize and bring forward some new definitions that are appropriate for this day and age and the new land use types that we're going to be presenting. And of course, with that is the zoning map update. We'll have a new zoning map that'll basically reset the stage and baseline for us. We right now have a zoning map that's fairly well put together, but it's been somewhat crafted over many years. And so every once in a while we've come into an error. We're going to basically have a brand new map people will not be surprised to find that the map that they're looking at or the information they had may be outdated or there was some change. We'll have a new map and that'll help avoid any confusion or errors moving forward. And last but not least, we've worked on the objective design standards. We're working on implementing SB 9. We've looked at other state laws during the course of this that came up along the way, and we've been working hard on those as well. So we feel we're making good progress. We're a little behind schedule on what we anticipated, but we feel we're making good progress, and we'll be able to bring this back to you. We expect to have all those remaining articles reviewed by staff by spring. March, April is what I'm guesstimating. We're going to do outreach meetings, a couple of outreach meetings to the public to share them the code, make sure they understand it, make sure there's opportunity to understand it, to provide meaningful input. And then we'll have two public meetings and then 2 public hearings for adoption. And the goal and hope is to have that all completed by fall of 2022. So that's all I have for my presentation, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Craig. All right, council members, do you have any questions? You can either put yourself speaker. Okay, go ahead, Councilmember Bracco.
Yes. Are you going to be taking a look at the categories that you put businesses under? The reason I ask is because when I bought my property, our zoning calls a towing company the same as a wrecking yard, which they're nothing alike. So are you going to be looking at stuff like that to make sure you have the right?
We are going to be looking at things like that to make sure that we have a distinction or differentiation between uses that may not be the same or may have some different land uses. That is one of the things we're asking our consultant to look at and to update. And if towing yard and wrecking yard should be different because they operate differently, that's something we could look at. I'll specifically look at that now because I'm not sure that was on our radar as an issue, but we are trying to get into those kinds of things and do our best job trying to do that. As part of the public process and as part of the vetting process through you, we'll have preliminary meetings before adoption to share the code with the council and the commission. So some of those things might get further refined after you all get a chance to really see what's been done. Our goal is to be kind of light touch, though. We want to keep a lot of the land uses we have and then add to them or further expand upon them where we know there's a different use type that's come into play. But one of the things we're also cautioning the consultant against doing is having too many land use types if we can keep them more broad, it gives us the ability to be more flexible as well. So there's a little, it's kind of a double-edged sword where you can identify things too finely and then you don't allow use and you want to keep it a broad enough range, but you don't want to, if we don't want to rule something out. So
Okay, good.
Okay, I cannot see who's in the queue. I don't know what. Okay, how do I see that? And what's that screen supposed to be for?
Should I get that off?
Okay. Okay, so something to note going forward, I cannot see who's in the queue and I cannot see any timer when people are speaking. So, okay.
The timer might be in the top right corner when you see them speak. It's super tiny.
Okay, right. So, okay, well, so you're telling me Councilmember Hilton's in the queue, so Councilmember Hilton.
Thank you, Mayor. Craig, thank you for the report. I know this is an extremely heavy lift for a small and mighty planning department, even though you guys have consultants. So, but I understand now why the building codes don't get done. They get redone every 3 years because it is a lot of work. My only feedback that I always want to try to take the opportunity is that we somehow watermark the zoning map for the year that it's for, and maybe even other documents, because right now if you go to zoning map online, it shows the zoning map, but that's not actually the true zoning map because it's being updated. That's my only feedback. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else in the queue to speak? Okay, then I'd like to go to public comment if there are any. Okay, then closing public comment and looking for accepting the report is the action item. Does anybody want to propose such acceptance?
That doesn't really take a motion. If there's no adverse comments on the report, then I think the report is accepted.
Okay, then thumbs up to accept the report?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't see Councilmember Hilton's hand, so I don't know. I'm trying to make sure I can say that nobody is objecting to the report.
Right.
Okay? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Okay, item B, discussion on renter protection policies. Staff report, Bryce Atkins, Senior Management Analyst. And Bryce, if you could start with why we're hearing this, because some of us are confused as to why this is back before us. Okay.
Yes, Mayor and Council. This item is back before you because the order of operations that happened between the legislative agenda being adopted, when the ordinance came back before Council, and the budget document creates a little bit of ambiguity. So we're going to check in with Council to make sure that we have a thorough understanding of the legislative agenda and if this is an item that Council wishes to continue in some other format, or if it was resolved with the previous attempt to adopt an ordinance. So to just kind of give a little bit of that background, on February 1st, there was a future council-initiated item to adopt more robust protections from eviction. Later that month, there's a second presentation on the potential renter protections, including an eviction moratorium. There's direction to bring back language on a moratorium for non-payment of rents. In February and March, there was a strategic planning session that was identifying priorities. Renter protection policy was one of those items. In April, there was the draft renter protection order was presented, but failed from lack of support. However, in the budget, during the budget process, the legislative agenda was included in the renter protection remained, as that was an item during that strategic planning process. So staff is just seeking clarification to make sure, was that ordinance resolving the legislative agenda item, or is there something more that Council wishes staff to pursue on this? There have been some changes in governmental policy. The CDC eviction moratorium was overturned. There's new legislation proposed to grant the CDC that authority, but this time it has not passed. It's still in committee. For the state, the eviction moratorium changed in October, so landlord can now evict with certain requirements. And under that AB 832, cities are now prohibited from enacting eviction moratoriums through March of 2022. And then finally, the county, their moratorium ended in August. They are now deferring to state law and declarations on their website. So staff is requesting clarification first if a renter protection policy based on the prior actions and the change of the legislative agenda, is it still a legislative item that Council wants us to pursue? And then if so, what elements of it that Council desires to see in such a policy, given the previous ordinance failing due to lack of support? that completes the presentation.
Okay, so with that, we'll go to questions. The only one I'm going to ask first is, did our action on April 5th not, I mean, the action we took to not move forward with any kind of moratorium, wasn't that after the future agenda item request to consider?
Correct, it was after the future agenda item, but it was still included and part of the strategic plan that was adopted.
But what do you
So
mean
that's
still was included? What do you mean by that?
So in the presentation to council of the budget document, the legislative agenda was presented to council, and it was one of the items that was on the legislative agenda. And so we're just wanting to make sure that we're following the council. If that rejection of the ordinance is sufficient, then
Right,
we stop
okay,
at that
so I
point.
guess I thought it was, so that's why we're here, is to everybody see. So, anybody else with questions? Yes?
Bryce, just one quick question. If you could go back one slide. I'm sorry, I'm still not wrapping my brain around the part where it says AB 832. So cities are prohibited from enacting an eviction moratoria through March of 2022. So we can't do anything until that time anyway, correct? If we were to want to do something, just speaking hypothetically.
Correct. If it's eviction moratorium specifically, then yes, it could not go into effect until April 1st, 2020.
I see. So you're looking for direction from us today that if we were still to have an interest in doing something, it could only be an interest that's enacted beyond March of next year.
Correct.
I understand. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Bracco?
Yeah, I don't understand why we're discussing this again. I mean, we voted no. I think that's clear. No means no. So I don't understand why we're here again. I haven't changed how I feel about it, so I'm ready to move on.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have something to say? Okay, then what do we do here? We need to give direction. Oh, public comment.
Mayor, no public comment.
Okay, thank you. No public comment. All right. Okay, so is there support one way or another? Someone needs to start it somewhere. Peter?
So
Yeah.
I'll agree with that last statement in the sense that for me, nothing has changed since we last discussed the issue. So the motion on my part would be to take no action at this time.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and is that a roll call or a screen?
That does not have to be a roll call.
Okay. It's not on our screen either. There we go. Peter, do you want to move it? Okay.
Mayor, sorry, can I ask a quick question before we vote?
I suppose.
Okay, just in regards to this, if later on, if things sort of change for the worse, is this something that we can bring back for discussion, or is this?
You'd have to future agenda. Yeah, exactly, of course.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is just, staff seems to need, apparently we left something open.
Right.
And we need to close that door. Right.
So just in clarification then, a yes vote would mean that our vote from the past has not changed.
Right.
A yes
The
vote is
motion
voting
is
for
that
no.
we are still saying, do not pursue,
Okay,
right?
Thank you.
Right, that's clear, right? Okay. All right, and that's unanimous with one absent. All right, council, thank you. And that brings us, thank you, Bryce. I guess you're not going anywhere because that brings us now to item C, which is a resolution of the City Council of the City of Gilroy supporting the Brand Wang Mendoza Tripartisan Land Use Initiative to amend Article 11 of the Constitution of the State of California to make zoning and land use community affairs and not of state interest. Staff report.
Yes, Mayor and Council, as you are aware, the state of California has in recent years adopted a trend of adopting laws that pertain to land use policy and apply them to all the communities throughout the state of California uniformly. This is basically usurping local control of land use policy, and they don't consider the local unique elements of our communities where the legislation may not be the best solution for our community. In response to this trend, there's a ballot initiative that's being proposed. It's called the Brand, as the Mayor read off, the Brand Wang Mendoza Tripartisan Land Use Initiative, which is seeking to amend the California Constitution to allow planning documents like our general plan to supersede general state law. There are 4 exceptions to that, which is whenever a voter-approved initiative is enacted. Coastal land use plan will still supersede any ordinance regarding the siting of a 50 or higher megawatt power plant that's determined by the Public Utilities Commission to be a matter of statewide concern, or the development or construction of a water, communication, or transportation infrastructure project of statewide concern. So the resolution tonight would be in support of, would essentially signal council's support of this initiative, and if adopted, the resolution would be relayed to their organizers in order to aid in advocacy. At this point, it's still waiting title and summary from the state of California, and then at that point, it would move on to signature gathering.
Right.
With that completes the presentation.
All right, thank you. So does anyone have questions of Bryce before, this is where I want to go into my tie with the City Association, but not if you have questions of Bryce. Nope? Okay, so Cities Association, which I'm a representative for this council, took a position to oppose SB 9. As we all know, SB 9 passed. The governor signed it, and so effective January 1 of 2022, that all becomes effective. To my knowledge, this is the only organized proposal that I'm aware of, and by being aware of it, it's through the members of the Cities Association, which, by the way, is the 15 cities of Santa Clara County. When I say Cities Association, that's what I mean. This is the only organized proposal for a ballot initiative that will give the voters of California the opportunity to say whether they prefer land use and zoning to be within the local jurisdiction or not. In my outward-looking role as the mayor, I see land use and zoning as a major item of significance, and that's why I'm bringing it before the council to see what position this city council, if any, wishes to take, and also of great interest to our residents. So I am asking to see if the city of Gilroy wants to be on as an endorser of an initiative that gives the voters the opportunity to decide. It's a statewide initiative. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say about it in my position with Cities Association. Does anyone else have any comments or things to add, or I will go to the public? Okay, do we have public comment?
No public comment, Mayor.
No public comment. I am surprised. Are you okay?
Okay.
It's not on.
Mayor, I agree 100% that we need to do whatever we can to wrench back local control from Sacramento. They have no idea what our city's needs are. We're rural. We're not like San Jose. We're not like Oakland or San Francisco. We have a special relationship with our community and all of our community. So it is important that we educate the folks in Gilroy about this petition drive that we're going to be doing to make sure they understand the importance. So I won't take up too much time, but thank you so much for bringing this to our attention.
All right, thank you. So, okay, so no other public comment then?
None.
All right, so that brings back to council. Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Bracco, seconded by Councilmember Tovar. Does this need to be roll call? It says roll call on my agenda.
It does because it's a resolution.
Okay.
Councilmember Bracco.
Yes.
Hilton.
No.
LaRoe Munoz.
Yes.
Marks. Yes. Tovar.
Yes.
Mayor Blakely.
Yes. Okay, that passes 5 by 5. 1 no and 1 absent. Okay, item D, Community Development Block Grant, CDBG overview. And Karen's going to give this report.
All right, good evening, Mayor Blankley, members of the council, Karen Garner, Community Development Department. It's that time of year where we're just about to kick off the next CDBG or Community Development Block Grant funding cycle. So taking this opportunity to give an overview, I know for several of you, it'll probably be a refresher of things you've heard before, but just want to give you that overview so that you can think about it in the context of any feedback that you might want to provide as we kick off that next funding cycle. So just as a reminder, Gilroy is what's called an entitlement jurisdiction from the Housing and Urban Development Department, the federal agency that oversees CDBG dollars, which means we get funds directly from HUD rather than having to work through the county. And then any funding that we get, all CDBG, I'm going to have to say this several times, so I better get used to this. CDBG dollars have to meet one of the national objectives set forth by HUD. The most common one is that it benefit low and moderate income. And that's an important one. And in fact, HUD requires that at least 70% of the dollars are used for activities that benefit low and moderate income persons. And that's defined as a family or household income that falls at or below 80% of the county's median household income. Any activities that are funded with CDBG dollars also have to be on their list of eligible activities, and that's a pretty extensive list. So looking at how we determine what we're going to spend it on, what information we need to provide, sort of at the top of the hierarchy is the 5-year consolidated plan. Our current one is from 2020 to 2025. And that really identifies the local community needs and set forth a strategy to address those needs. Below that's the annual action plan, very closely related, but the annual action plan is year by year. How exactly are we going to spend those CDBG dollars? And so in that annual action plan, it'll, when we, for example, fund a nonprofit, their program and activities will go into that annual action plan. And that is what comes back to council around May for you to adopt, as well as agreeing how we're going to spend our dollars for the year. And then we also have the Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, or CAPER, and that essentially says how we've done with the dollars that were given to us. So we actually received a notice last week from HUD that approved our CAPER for last year, and it was a very positive letter. They said we're meeting all the key indicators and that CDBG funds. So that was a good letter to get from HUD. So to look at it another way, annual action plan is the plan that says here's how we're going to spend our CDBG dollars, and the CAPER is here's how we did spend our CDBG dollars. Citizen participation plan is also an important part of it. That's in the 5-year consolidated plan. Citizen outreach and participation is a big part of this whole process, and so HUD makes sure that we have that in there and that we follow that, and when we do outreach that we follow our plan. And then City of Gilroy has our own policies and procedures, and that is really our day-to-day guide of how we need to go about making sure we're tracking everything. As you know, CDBG has a lot of boxes to check and things to make sure that we're doing with all of our processes. So that's how we track and make sure we're doing those things. So our annual allocation, how much money we get, we find that out from HUD, usually around January, February each year. At times it's been a little bit later if the feds haven't passed their budget. It makes it kind of interesting because we kick off our process before then, so we're guessing a little bit how many dollars we'll have to spend, and we do have to make adjustments as we go along. The formula is based on something HUD puts together, and it considers several weighted factors such as population, poverty level, overcrowding in homes, and share of growth and the age of our housing stock. So I'll put in a plug. When you're filling out your census, this is a direct connection by what you put on your census form and the dollars that Gilroy gets through this program. So these tables, or this table up here, shows the amount we've had for 5 years. As you can see, it varies somewhere between about $450,000 to $500,000. So we'll take what we got last year, and we will probably assume we're going to get right around that same amount. And then again, when we get that final number from HUD, we'll make the adjustments. A couple of the rules that apply to these dollars: a maximum of 15% can be spent for public services, and public services are what we think of when we talk about partnering with our nonprofits to provide services. I do want to point out that per previous council direction, we take about $40,000 every year of those public service dollars and allocate them to the Gilroy Youth Center and the programming that they provide. So the remainder, which last year was about $27,400, is what we use for the competitive grant program. As Bryce talked about a month ago or so, we also pair that up with some Housing Trust Fund dollars. So the Housing Trust Fund kicks in about another $170,000, and that's what we have available through this competitive grant process to our nonprofits. And then a maximum of 20% of what's given to us can be used for administrative costs, staffing, our consultant that helps us out a great deal with Cdbg. Another important rule is that we cannot retain more than 1.5 times our annual allocation. This money is meant to come in and go right back out into the community. So as much as we'd like to save up some dollars for a nice big project, we can't do that. We have to take it in and send it right back out. All right, so some of the past projects that we've funded have been ADA improvements, pathways at Las Animas Park, San Ysidro Park. Recently, we're replacing a hot water system and fire alarm at Cherry Blossom Apartments, which are low-income city-owned apartments. Also doing the design work for pedestrian crossing improvement at Monterey Gateway Senior Apartments. And just a little bit on Cherry Blossom, we use other Cdbg funds for them. Basically, our rental income is going back into a lot of the repair work that needs to be done. We've also used Housing Trust Fund dollars for that. Cherry Blossom needs a lot of work. We have put together a good list of projects. I think there was close to 50 things that need to be done, very small, from fixing baseboards and replacing smoke detectors to bigger things like roof repairs. And Walter Dunkel and his crew have been doing a great job working away on that list and making things better out there. But some of the bigger projects like the water heater and fire system, we need this pot of Cdbg dollars to help us pay for those things. Another one, they did some roof repairs, but that roof is going to have to be replaced in the next year or two. So that'll be a big expense that we need to fund. Another one I wanted to point out, which is non-public service dollars, is the funding we give to Rebuilding Together Silicon Valley. They do housing rehab for low-income disabled and senior residents. And over the past 4.5 years, they have assisted about 90 Gilroy households, which is about 149 people. The average amount of assistance is about $4,700. And they do things like fire and safety improvements, grab bars, minor plumbing, electrical, water heater repair, roof replacement. I just want to show a couple of photos of some of the work they've done. You have the steps that were clearly unsafe, and those have been replaced with much better quality materials. And that's at the top. And then below, you have a resident who needed an accessible way to get into their front door. So there's a lift there that is at the front entrance. And the nice thing is, these are folks who probably can't afford to pay for these repairs on their own, or if you've ever tried to hire a contractor to do a small job like those steps, they are impossible to find. So this organization comes in, no charge to the homeowners, does the work, and helps make these homes livable. So I'm not going to go into detail on this timeline, but just to note that we're just about to kick off this process, and that starts with letting folks know money is available and starting to get feedback from our community of any ideas they have for how we should spend some of those funds, and also for those who want to apply for the grants to get information and understand what the process is. So that'll continue, and the key date, what's kind of the driver of this, is we have to draft our annual action plan to show how we're going to spend those dollars. That has to be submitted to HUD by May 15th. So that's what drives this whole process. And HNRC has been evaluating these applications along with staff, or helping us do that. And just so you're aware that it's not actually a requirement to have competitive grant proposals. It's done different ways in different cities. Some cities do follow that format, but there's other cities where the applications come in directly to staff. Staff evaluates them, takes them to council. The council review, that's the required part. 2 public hearings, that's a required part. Everything else that we do is really just our way of doing it. So I just wanted to point that out. But we're going to have, last year we had a 1-year cycle just because of evaluating both Housing Trust Fund, Cdbg, COVID, everything else that was happening. We are recommending that we go with a 2-year grant funding cycle. Now, what that means is we look at 2 years worth of funding. However, we only approve 1 year at a time. So if funding changes, and CDBG dollars will change slightly, or Housing Trust Fund dollars, if something is decided where we no longer want to continue using Housing Trust Fund dollars in this way, we are only committed to 1 year of funding at a time. So, but it helps to have 2-year cycle because it is a very comprehensive, very lengthy application for folks to fill out and to review. And the reason for that is because those questions that we ask on that application are really what we have to report out to HUD. And so by asking on that application, they know what they're in for. We know what we're going to be tracking and reporting on with HUD for each of those programs and services. One last thing I just want to mention is there's always questions that come up about, well, how do we know if our applicants are spending the money the way we said they said they were going to, if they're doing a good job? And there's actually a lot of reporting that goes on with that. So they're required to submit a quarterly report. They actually submit it twice a year, but it's 2 quarters at a time. And so all those questions that we asked on the application, metrics and things, that's what they're reporting on. We take a look at that. We give copies to HNRC. HNRC takes a look at it. If there are any questions, we can ask them, hey, how come you're low on this number? And a lot of times, like COVID, there's a good reason why. We can, if someone is underperforming and doesn't have a good explanation, we don't have to give them the reimbursement, the funding, if they're not performing. It's also a way for the next cycle, when HNRC or staff or whomever is reviewing an application, if they can see, hey, we funded them last time and they just didn't perform, that's something to take into consideration whether we want to fund them for the next cycle. So with that, I think that about wraps it up. If there's any questions that you have, or input on our current process, be happy to take that right now. The only specific question we're asking is if council would be okay to return to a 2-year cycle, again, subject to 1-year grant agreements, rather than sticking with the 1-year cycle. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Karen. It's nice to see dollars going to really worthwhile causes. Did I hear you say that the monies have to be spent first and then they get reimbursed?
That's correct. They have to show us that they have performed the services. They don't have to necessarily give us receipts, but if they said we're going to serve 100 meals, they have to show they have served those 100 meals before we will reimburse them.
So they have to front the cost.
Right.
They're fronting the cost. I wasn't aware of that. Okay, council, questions of Karen? None? Okay, is there any public comment?
No public comment, Mayor.
Back to council. We're looking for a direction to at least go to a 2-year cycle. Would someone like to make a proposal? Okay, Councilmember Marks.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's not on our screen, so Councilmember Marks made a motion, if it needs to be a motion, seconded by Councilmember Tovar. We need a roll call vote?
No roll call votes necessary.
Okay. And no thumbs up either? Do a vote.
I think because you're giving specific directions, it's advisable to do a formal vote.
Okay, so a formal vote on our screens?
Because we're switching to a 2-year cycle. That's
correct.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so everybody, if you could look at your screen. Okay, passes 6 with 1 absent. Very good. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item E, status report regarding city cybersecurity assessment, cyber resilience program, and implementation plan. And that's going to be Scott Golden. Hi, Scott.
Hi, good evening, Honorable Mayor and Council. Tonight I am giving a status update on the cybersecurity assessment. Cyber Resiliency Program and Implementation Plan, RFP. A mouthful. This is just a status update for you to receive the report. So the RFP itself was a 4-month process. We released, and there's no presentation. We released the RFP in July. We finished the selection just last month in November. We had overwhelming interest. We had 42 vendors that were interested at the initial stages of the process. We received 17 proposals, and we narrowed it down to 3 finalists. Securance Consulting was selected as the finalist, as noted in the report. The vendor was with, most of the proposals were within a certain sweet spot for costs, between 50 and 100,000, approximately 2/3 of the vendors. Securance was within that range. They were not the lowest nor the highest, but we felt that they were the best fit for us and selected them. The intent of the project is to fully assess our technology environment. This will include technological assessments, but also looking at areas such as physical security of our technology assets, as well as looking at policies and procedures, so how we're actually managing and implementing the technology within our environment, and also creating implementation plan so that once they've assessed our environment, they'll prioritize what they've found for us to implement and correct, and then creating a cyber resiliency program, which is a program that will allow us to continue to maintain as high a security as possible. Achieving cybersecurity is not something you just do and say we're secure. It is something that is an ongoing process. So the program will provide the necessary components for us to maintain that. And the plan is to begin the contract process with the vendor and then begin work in January on the actual project. And that is all that, all of that is included in the report, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I can see that one council member is waiting to speak, but I don't know who. Okay. Yeah. I hope this gets straight. This gets fixed.
It's a
okay.
mystery every time.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to get.
Okay.
Scott, thank you very much for the report and for all of the work that goes into it. This is something that you and I have talked about, that I've brought up to council for many years, and I'm thankful that the council has been supportive as well of this effort. I mean, we know that hardening our cyber defenses is not just in the city government's best interest, it's in the best interest of all of our residents and our community members. I mean, we have so much data flowing through us as a city that we really have to take steps to make sure we are being as responsible with that as possible. I think you correctly identified that this is not a one and a done. You check a box and say, hey, we're done. It's like health, right? You don't work out once in your life and say, well, that's it, I'm healthy for the rest of my life. It's an ongoing process. And I just wanted to thank you and your team in particular, Scott, for all you've done to make sure that we're taking the steps to make us as healthy from a cyber perspective.
Thank you.
Okay, and now I see someone else wants to speak, but again, okay, Councilmember Tovar.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, again, good report, and I want to echo what my colleague is saying. And maybe I'm missing it here, because typically you mentioned there were several other companies that were that you looked at, but you decided that this was the best, even though it wasn't the most expensive or the least expensive. I'm just curious where those figures are, those numbers are of the different companies that aren't listed on here. The reason why I ask is my understanding, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, but this is a company that's out in Florida, correct? And as you know, I'm really concerned when we go outside of California for things like this. So is there a reason why I understand you said it's because it's a company that you've worked with before, but I don't see the list of all the other companies and sort of the cost, and can you sort of help me with this?
Sure. This is not a company that I've ever worked with before, so I'll clarify that.
Okay.
In fact, there was a proposal from a company that the city has worked for, and it was actually to do our SCADA cyber. Well, it was a SCADA assessment, and it included a cybersecurity component. They did propose, but they were not selected to move forward. This company, yes, they are based in Florida. In fact, all three of our finalists were not based in California. All three were back east. They do have a number of California references, and I did check with those references, and they had done work that was well regarded.
Okay. Yeah, and again, I'm in support of it, but I actually didn't vote against it because of, again, I'm concerned and I don't like when we go outside of sort of California for business. So that's going to be my no vote because, again, I was hoping it would be a local company.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else waiting to speak? You say, okay, Councilmember Marks.
I understand Councilmember Tovar's feelings, but on the other hand, if there is a better company out there, it shouldn't matter where they are from, because I would not want to get work done that was not in the best interest for the city. So I think we have to be very prudent shoppers and go with what our gut says is the best. Thank you.
Mayor, can I respond to that?
Okay. This is not actually something we're going to be, it's just received report. So okay. I think your point is well taken. If you want to say something else, you certainly can, but I think your point is made.
Yeah, no, I just want to respond to my colleague's comments, and I understand that, but it's, as you heard, it's a company that we haven't worked with before. So to say they're the best company, you don't know that, I don't know that, and we don't know that. So again, I think for me is there's plenty of other great companies that are local that we could have went with as well. So that's just my comment. Thank you.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. So wait, public comment. Any? No public comment. Okay. There is no public comment. So we have a motion and a second, and everybody go ahead, and you're voting to receive the report, and that passes 5 with 1 no and our absentee. All right. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, staff, for all your work in having to wade through that many applicants. Okay, that brings us to item 11, City Administrator's Report, 2 pieces. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I actually have 3 pieces. I'm going to sneak one more in on you. As you can tell, we have significant change in technology and equipment in the council chambers. And as you can also tell, we've not quite mastered it yet, but we will. And so I do want to thank Scott Golden and his group who, they did this in just a couple of weeks, and you can still see some holes and some of the equipment's not working, but we will take your feedback, and by the time we come back in January, I'm sure you'll see a significant change. But I can tell you it's better already. You can hear the microphones, you don't have to have your face up against them. The screen is better, so some minor improvements that will make big differences in our way to conduct meetings. So I want to thank Scott, and I also want to thank council for their patience, but please pardon our dust. We'll get there. The second I'm going to skip, I'm going to do the Sharks Ice update real quick, and then we'll go to Chief Espinosa. I have received questions concerning the status of the Sharks negotiations. And unfortunately, you're not always able to tell everybody what's going on, even though you'd like to. But the intent was that we would be submitting a term sheet to the City Council here in December. And a term sheet is just a general agreement about what you're looking at in a deal, and to see if it was something that council would approve. If that was the case, then we would go into the legal process of negotiating an actual formal agreement. We are still in that process with the Sharks. We have been going back and forth trying to figure out a few deal details, but unfortunately due to just some delays, not on anybody's fault, just things coming up, we will not be back with that till at the very minimum January. But I don't want anybody to think that's good news or bad news. It's just part of the process, and sometimes as you know, when you're doing other things, including the Sharks and us, it takes a little longer than you would expect. So for that, I'll move on to the last piece, which is the Gilroy crime update. Going along the same lines that we wish we could always tell everybody, but we're doing, and getting some feedback from social media that, you know, maybe the police aren't doing anything. I can tell you, just being on the inside, that nothing could be further from the truth. Our officers and our detectives are working nonstop to try to address some of the things that have happened in our community in the last month or two. And so I felt it was important that the council have an opportunity to talk to the police chief, for the police chief to give you some information about some of the things that have been going on recently, because it's concerning for all of us, including the residents. And now would be a good time to maybe get some of those questions answered or get some information about the process and about how Chief Espinosa is handling some of these issues. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Espinosa. Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council, members of the public. This is a high-level status update on our current crime trends. And unfortunately, we've exceeded the national trend of the uptick in homicides. Nationally, in some metropolitan areas, their homicide rate has increased by as much as 30%. Here locally, we usually average 0 to 1 homicides a year, and unfortunately, we're up to 6. So that's a 200% increase, and if you take a 5-year median, that is a 500% increase. We typically average 1. We started off the year with uptick in violent crime with 2 homicides in the month of January. And then we had about 5-6 months that were pretty quiet. And then we had 2 in June, 1 in October, and 1 in November. For a small organization, it's very taxing. We currently have 5 investigators, 1 of who dedicates himself to robbery homicide. We have 1 assigned to sex crimes, 1 adult, 1 child, and a property crimes detective. We have utilized every available resource that we have. We pulled back 2 of our detectives assigned to task force, the Regional Enforcement Allied Computer Team Task Force, the High-Tech Task Force, and the Santa Clara County Special Enforcement Team, which primarily focuses on violent crimes and narcotic sales. And so they've been also helping us investigate these cases. Typically, when a patrol officer responds to a scene of a homicide, certainly it becomes a crime scene, and we roll out the crime scene investigators, and now it is handed off to a detective, who is the primary case agent. When you have a large crime scene that necessitates the deployment of several investigators, and certainly everyone takes a part regardless of what they do in that unit. And so as you may appreciate, when you have a crime scene with 30 witnesses, that is pretty taxing. Also, a slight increase in our aggravated assaults. And these are assaults that are likely to cause great bodily injury. And it could be your stabbings, any object that could cause great bodily injury. Those are up about 43%. And lastly, the other crimes that are up are domestic violence crimes, which was expected due to the COVID shutdown. And those are slightly up 13%. What is staying, the percentages that are staying, and let me backtrack and say that these are numbers through the calendar year fourth quarter. And so we are yet to get the December numbers. That could slightly increase or decrease some of these percentages. Some of the property crime statistics are either status quo or lowered slightly, and that is due to some of these businesses either being closed for the first quarter of the year and or some businesses just not reporting crime, which is not news to us, as some of these state propositions have made it difficult to get prosecutions of some of these property crimes. Juvenile arrests are down. We went from 102 in 2020 to 63 in 2021, which, in the whole grand scheme of things, that's good news. Adult arrests are down as well. Larceny is down 8%. Robbery is down 28%. And so, again, the property crimes are slightly status quo or lower. The concern is the violent crime, the aggravated assaults, and the homicide. On a yearly basis, when you combine all the property crimes, which includes robberies, burglaries, commercial burglaries, that sort of thing, vehicle thefts, your stolen vehicle, on a yearly basis, when you add all that dollar amount, you're looking at approximately $4 million in loss. And so when you start to recover some of that property, including the vehicles, then we typically recoup half of that on a yearly basis. And so those numbers are reported yearly to the FBI, the Unified Crime Reports, which is now the National Incident-Based Reporting System, the new way of reporting crime. So those are your Part 1 crimes. Your Part 2 crimes are your lesser vandalism type of cases. And those are, again, status quo, if not lowered by 10 to 15%. And that is a high level status update on our current trends. Again, the concern is the homicide rate and the aggravated assault increase here locally, which again, on the national level, they're 30 to 40, some metropolitan cities have reported up to 50%. What's catching national attention is your organized retail crime gangs. And so some counties have established task force to respond to it. We do have in Santa Clara County, we have a crime strategies unit that could do cross data sharing with other counties. And so there is such thing as cross-jurisdictional prosecution. However, the county itself in Santa Clara County has yet to establish a task force to deal just particularly with these theft rings. So with that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Okay, I'll go ahead. Councilmember Laura Munoz.
Chief, as always, thank you so much for the detailed report. It shows how much work really is being done in the city and how a stretched force is doing the best it can. So I appreciate that. My question goes to one of the comments we had at the very beginning of the meeting, specifically around crime in homeless encampments. How is the force interacting or policing those encampments, especially as it comes to things like maybe narcotics use or some of the aggravated assaults that you mentioned?
Right. And, you know, I'll preface my comment with what was shared earlier. And, you know, and I think I said this before, I've had the opportunity to work in a couple narcotics units, and you're absolutely right. The first narcotic unit that I worked with was in 1999, and we were buying a pound of methamphetamine for $23,000. And now you could buy a pound of methamphetamine for $1,500, depending on the purity. And so that is a challenge. You know, you flood the community, and this is across the state. You flood a community with narcotics, then certainly your property crime. And again, there's proven numbers that sometimes there is a direct correlation between the level of narcotics arrests and your property crimes in your community. That is not, you know, that's something that we haven't compared and contrasted here locally, but certainly that could be attributed to. And so for homeless encampments, we are responding as we get those complaints. And, you know, because of COVID, we are not actively going out and cleaning camps without just being collecting trash per se, or just cleaning around them. And so, but we are still responding to complaints. And, you know, certainly when we go to those encampments, then we treat it like we would any other call for service, and legally work around our parameters as to what we can and can't do. Certainly if the complaint is someone that may be under the influence of a controlled substance, then we'll treat it as that. We'll do the evaluation, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, Councilmember Tovar.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, first of all, thank you, and please send my best to the entire department for the work they're doing.
Thank you.
You know, you look at past history, violent crimes, especially the homicide, where we're at 6 compared to 1 yearly. What do you attribute that to? I mean, is it just, I know this last year is a very unique year, and but do you think COVID has something to do with it? And sort of people, I'm just trying to figure out, because a lot of people say, well, you know, what's going on in our city? Why is there so much violence? Well, I mean, there's something that is contributing to that, because I mean, it's never been like that. Again, I know you might not have the answer to that, but I'm just curious what you think might. Certainly. Yeah.
And anecdotally, I could share my experience. And every single one of these homicides, a firearm was used, at least one firearm. And so in the last year, we've recovered 46 guns that are attributed to a crime. That is not counting the weapons we took as means of violence restraining order, or a domestic violence restraining order, or someone that was committed to what is called 5150 hold, and then we took their guns for safekeeping. That is a completely separate number. But guns that are attributed to a criminal case were 46. That's a lot of guns. And so at the county level, you know, and we have a county chiefs meeting on a monthly basis. In San Jose, they gave us a number. I think it was 50 ghost guns they took in 1 week, which is, it's a huge amount. And these ghost guns, you can buy a lower and an upper receiver and in essence make your own gun that doesn't have a serial number. It's not traceable. And so the prosecution end of it, you know, if you don't have the accountability on the opposite end, then you empower and embolden a certain sector of the community that you're going to take chances. And so there's a lot of guns out in the streets.
No, and thank you for that. And my second question in regards to the size of our city, and I guess this is more for the public's, you know, knowledge. You look at the size of our city and you look at the number of police officers that we currently have. Are we in line with what a city our size and our police officer, number of police officers that we should have? If not, you know, how many more would sort of put us at a level where, you know, this is the number that we need?
Right. You know, there was different deployment models. You know, a lot of municipal agencies do the per capita. Mm-hmm. You know, your 1.5 to 1.7 per thousand. There's that unobligated time, which is a recommendation from the International Association of Chiefs of Police that typically an officer should have 33% to 40% of unobligated time to go out there and do the community engagement, the community-oriented policing, problem-oriented policing, reactionary type of approach. And so nationally, it's all over the place right now because of the recruitment challenges. Officers are retiring at an alarming rate. We can't keep up. And so there's agencies offering up to $30,000 signing bonuses, and they can't keep up. So the numbers are all over the place. But, you know, nationally, it depends on the model the local government chooses to adopt. You know, again, it could be per capita, it could be a budget amount, it could be unobligated time. So, but you compare it at the county level, you know, there are some agencies that are slightly lower in population that could have a little bit more, a couple more officers than we do.
Right. So again, you know, ideally, or sort of, if you know, could, I mean, how many more officers do you think we would need to have to sort of put us at a level that, again, when you look at the homicides and crime, I mean, again, because I want the community to know that you guys are doing the best that you can with what you have. So, I mean, what number would that be?
You know, certainly my concern is always burning out our folks. You know, and you take something as small as an investigation unit that gets hit with 4 homicides, and now they're working consistently for a couple of months. And so their wellness is important to me. And so that we've been tackling on the opposite end. You know, and frankly, it's always difficult for a chief of police to stand up here and say, we need X amount of officers to you know, lower the homicide rate. Because again, is there a correlation between the number of officers and the homicide rate? I think the best approach would be, one, if we have people knocking on the door and saying, you know, we want this police officer job, and then so we would be in a position to say, okay, now that we have the interest and we have a particular problem, then we could address it with the numbers.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember. I have a couple myself, but they kind of piggyback really on what's been said. So I have 2. One, you mentioned that homicide and aggravated assault are the highest ones. I would like to know if you know, has narcotics sales risen in Gilroy, if you know? And then the second thing is, what do you need most that we might be able to do something about?
So the drug trends, and so Prop 47 and SB 57 decriminalized some of the drug charges that were back then charged as felonies. And so take a possession for sale investigation where you have a neighbor that calls in and says, I suspect my neighbor is selling narcotics. I see traffic at all hours of the night. And so we send an investigator, we assign an investigator to probably conduct some surveillance. And so in order to get a search warrant, you need a felony to be committed. And so what used to be a felony is no longer a felony. So it's not as easy to investigate a narcotic sales as it once was.
Thank you for explaining that to the public.
so,
That needs to be heard, yes.
And so if, on the street level, if you, something simple as a enforcement stop where someone has forfeited their Fourth Amendment rights, whether it be under probation or parole, and you conduct a search of the vehicle, you find a substantial amount of narcotics, maybe with something else to corroborate your belief that they're involved in sales, and then you could charge it as that. But then, again, it's two scenarios. One is kind of a no-brainer, and the other one comes from the community aspect, the concern, the complaints, and so it becomes a little bit challenging. Not to say that we can't do it, but because typically when someone is involved, you have to believe that we've heard about that name before, or they have recently or in the past been arrested, and so we are familiar. But it's a challenge. Narcotic sales are investigations are a challenge.
Mm-hmm. And what do you need most that we might be able to do something about?
I think what's one. I think there like we have at the county level on the prosecution end of it, we have a pretty good partnership, and whenever there's challenges, we make it a point to address it. Locally and at the state level is when we it would help if some of these crimes, particularly that were once a felony, now a misdemeanor, that tend to permeate in our communities, if there was some sort of higher accountability. As far as locally, certainly support's always important. Our folks need to feel like they're appreciated, and I think we do a pretty good job as far as being transparent about what we're doing and where the tax dollars are going. And so hiring is a challenge. For an organization our size, we have a pretty good reputation in the region, which attracts lateral officers, and we're continuing to hire lateral officers. If we were, we unfortunately, our staffing levels are the same they were 12, 13 years ago, and so we haven't kept up. And to no fault of anyone, it's just the profession hasn't attracted candidates like we used to.
Okay.
When I first took a test, there was 300 other people testing for the same job that I was. That's not the case anymore.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Bracco.
Yes, I just wanted to tell the chief that we appreciate you and all of your staff, and please let them know that they're appreciated.
Thank you.
I work with 6 different law enforcement agencies in my business. Gilroy is by far the best. It's always nice to deal with our officers. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Ditto that. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Chief. Thank you for that report.
Always available for any calls if you have any questions.
Right. Okay. City Attorney's report.
I have no report, but we have a closed session, excuse me.
Oh, was there public comment on the City Administrator's report? I'm sorry. Okay.
So this is on the crime update.
Yes.
Okay.
First of all, I want to thank you for everything that the police force does. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure all the citizens of Gilroy appreciate it. I just wanted to speak briefly. I wish there was more
Can you
transparency.
introduce yourself first? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. I'm Cheryl Parks.
Okay.
I just wish there was more transparency. I've been hearing a lot on social media about crimes here, crimes there. So I decided to do my own research, and I stumbled across the FBI Crime Data Explorer. That's a .gov, so it's real. And what I found out is that they create summaries based on information from police departments. And Gilroy, just looking at their graphics, has 3 times as much crime since 2010 to 2020 as Morgan Hill. and 2 times as much crime as Hollister. Now, someone said that's because our population's increasing. Well, so is everybody else, but their crime's going down significantly. Ours is going up. And so I'm wondering if part of the problem is because of transparency. On the city website, if you go to the link public safety, so city website, public safety, you go to the police page, there's a link that'll take you to something called City Protects. And when you go there, it says your connection to public safety, and it acknowledges that people can use this website to get a safer community, to be involved, be, neighborhood watch, that type of thing. Unfortunately, Gilroy Police Department's not a participating member, not a participating agency. So why have that link on our page if we're not a participating member? It's kind of like we're going to pretend we're transparent, but we're really not. So you can also go to the public information links, and again, it has the City Protect, so I'm going to look, but we're not participating in that. Or you could go to the incident links, but they haven't been updated since the end of July to early August. So I would just like more transparency.
Okay, thank you.
One other speaker, Ron Kirkish.
Okay.
I'd like to thank the chief too. And maybe I'd like to answer your question to somewhat, Mr. Tovar. When I was working at the HIDA, we discussed this issue a little bit about the need, what is the actual OSHA need, and there is an OSHA, I believe it's OSHA, Chief, that says what a community, how many officers per population a community should have. But that is just a stab in the dark, so to speak, or a recommendation. But what really the number depends on, I'm sure you know this too, Councilman, is that it depends on the crime rate of the city itself, such as Oakland or San Francisco that has a high crime rate. They're going to need more officers per capita versus Saratoga versus Gilroy. So hopefully that'll give you a little answer. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, sorry, Andy, go.
All right, we'll try again.
Uh-huh.
I have no report, but we do have a closed session, so I'll announce that. It's a public employee performance evaluation pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, Gilroy City Code Section 17A11-2. Employee title is Jimmy Forbes, City Administrator. So the first thing is to ask for any public comment on this item.
Okay.
All right. In that case, we can adjourn to closed session, and in closed session, your first action should be to take a vote to stay in closed session, and when you get out of closed session, report out that vote.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, thank you. Does anyone need a little break?